when you look at the definition that many scholars or many people have propounded, the three components that I think comes out of it that we'd also have to look at, which is on economic, social, and then cultural rights, altogether as proponents or as factors that we would have to consider when we are talking about rights to housing. And if you look at all these things, that all these three components that I'm talking about, which is on economic, which is on social, and then which is on cultural rights, then we will have to take into consideration other human rights that are related or that are related to these very rights. And my belief, when I always talk about a human right, that in a certain perspective, that the takeaway of one right would also affect other rights that we enjoy as people. So that is why the universality of human rights is the gospel. Most of us, or most people, or some of us who find ourselves within the human rights terrain, would always advocate for that. We look at the universality of human rights than looking at it from cultural perspective, or maybe looking at it from regional perspective and say that because we are living in Africa, we see human rights in a different way. So back to what we're talking about, which is that some of these rights, or just one aspect of human the rights of for housing or adequate to housing that we see, we have interrelation on other rights. For example, imagine somebody living in a community, in a very, very slum community. Even the living in that community has a different effects on the person, which could be linked to either health, which could be linked to living in a community where maybe there's no water. Look at the person living in that community maybe where there's no access to education, where there's no access to other human rights or other things that the person would have to enjoy that would make the person human. So there are lots of or many aspects of human rights that rights to housing affects, or right to housing interrelates with. And one of them, which I've already propounded, is on education. So like I was giving you a scenario where you are living in a very, very slum community, or living in a community which is not even slum, but just living in a place where you don't have adequate housing, you don't even have a place to sleep, you live on the street. And most street people, because would also affect even rights to work. And I don't know how, maybe most of them live on the streets and they have some little jobs that they do, but how would that jobs or the jobs that they find themselves doing really help them to be socially or economically strong, to be able to look at all other aspects of life? Because money or revenue, yes, or money is very, very important in our lives or in our living, where if you don't have money, I don't know if you could even have access to healthcare. In Ghana, for example, even the registration of NHIS card, it comes with a certain premium that we do pay. Imagine you don't have that money. So it is very, very important for us to look at housing rights as a holistically. And I would like to just refer us to a document that I was reading just some few days ago, which is on the United Nations habitats, which is on the right to adequate housing. It has propounded a document which speaks about the rights to adequate housing, and how some of these rights, if not taken care of, or how if we don't look at it from a certain perspective, to affect other human rights. And if you read this document, or we open to, that is page 3 of the document, which if you give me the opportunity, I want to read to so yes, it talks about aspects of so some of the aspects that it does affect. So rights to adequate housing contains freedom. This includes rights against forced eviction and arbitrary destruction, demolition of one's home, rights to free from arbitrary interference, and with one's home, privacy, and family. So if we then talk about um, human rights, and also talk about rights to housing, then these rights would have to be looked from a perspective where we see housing rights. What are the components of the housing rights that we can talk about? So if you have rights to property, which, for example, in an alternative constitution we do, or everybody has that right to property. So if you talk about right to property, what are some of the benefits, or what are some of the entitlements that comes with it? That is rights to be protected against forced eviction. So, for example, have my rights to own property, and I have my property living in Ghana. So, therefore, no other government or no other person, out of will or out of anything, could just come about to come and destroy or come and forcefully evict me. So, even if you are evicting me, you need to go through certain processes in making sure you come to that conclusion to do so. So, again, even if we take away that right from you, where you are forcefully evicted from a certain community. Imagine you don't have the rights to housing, and you are living there, and you are forcefully evicted from your. If you don't have that right, you wouldn't be able to. Should I use the word fight for the rights to property that we talk about, or the rights to own property that we would have to talk about? So basically, giving some background and some examples to some of the rights that it may affect. And I've mentioned the rights to work, I've mentioned the rights to education, and most young people, or most of our young folks who live within these communities, or live within or even sleep within the streets. And in some countries, for example, if you don't have an address system, or you don't have an address to your home, for example, you can't have the rights to enjoy other rights. You can't have the rights to even enjoy registering or maybe opening a bank account, because one of the basic requirements to even open a bank account is to know where you live, your house number, and some basic things that will be needed. And if you don't have the housing as well, definitely you can't even register for so many other ID card systems that we have within the country. And for now in Ghana, we are talking about the national identification card as one of the ID cards that we are going to be using to interconnect to other activities that we engage in. Now there's even a law, or no, not even a law per se, but then there's even a warning to workers or labor union, or that some of the workers who don't have the ID card would not be able to receive their salary in December. So, for example, if you don't have, if you don't live anywhere, you have a house, how would you be able to even register for that card to be able to enjoy other rights that the card would bring to you? So I believe sometime will come where I think we heard it from the politicians, that card will be used for voting. That card will be used for maybe as a passport. So even if you don't have it, you wouldn't even enjoy the right to even vote and be voted for, which is enshrined in our 1992 Constitution and other human rights instruments across the globe. So, so security of tenure would also be another thing that we also have to talk about. Even those of us who rent or live in apartments, live in rented apartments, we also have certain rights that we'd have to enjoy. So in a way, we're talking about the rights to, for instance, adequate housing. So in this right to adequate housing, imagine some of us wouldn't have the rights, or wouldn't have adequate housing, or certain countries that even don't even recognize right to housing. But I mean, for the records, I know most countries have signed to the treaties or signed to the convention or international. They have signed international treaties to put in systems to be able to implement the housing rights in their countries. So those of us who, back to again to talk about those of us who live in rented apartments, who wouldn't have or even know that our countries have developed policies to protect us one way or the other. Some of them could be related to rent control, whether we could live in this apartment, for how much you should pay, or how the durations, and all these things that comes around it. And security, which is also very, very important. as you pay for to live in a certain accommodation, there's some securities that should come around it. And for example, if that is taken away from you, then it will also affect all the components of rights that you would also enjoy as a person. The basic of them will be rights to life, and we all do have the right to live and live in enjoying all the rights that would have to talk about or have to list in mentioning. So, Doki, my long talks are on basic or other rights, or the basic rights or human rights that we all enjoy, that if you don't have adequate housing rights, some of these rights would be affected. And yes, so basically, again, we talk about inadequate and even non-discrimination to access of housing. Discrimination to also come around it. Imagine some of our children who go to school and there's, I mean, even the connotation, zongo, those oppressed from the zongos or from the Islam communities, some form of discrimination that comes among the young people. I mean, through the use of language, and some of these things really downplays on the level of confidence that some of these young people or the children would really think of or talk about. So basic lots of this lots of the human rights that we do enjoy are related to each other in one form or the other. So if you are taking the rights to housing, that has ripple effects on many of the rights that I've already listed in our conversation. I would like to maybe end a bit here, and if we do have some questions to ask, we will ask, and then we continue. Thank you, Doki.
Yes, there are some questions, as you have rightly said. Yes, so you did mention about some rights that are linked to, for example, housing. You need to have certain you need to have a house or an address in order to enjoy certain things, certain rights.
Yes, yes,
You gave some examples.
yes.
Do
I
you
gave
think it's
some
a good
examples.
idea?
Well, so if to a large extent to discriminate against a certain group of people, but then to another extent, it is very important for us to know as a country, know where our people live and see how we can be able to share resources, and if in case of any situation where people, I mean, engage in, I mean, fraudulent activities or engage in other things that other people's right, we should know where they are so that we can be able to trace and be able to find where they are to give solutions to other problems or other issues that will come about. So as far as another component of it that people will look up to is that, okay, well, this would not this will discriminate against a lot of people, but then to the benefits of most of us, this would help us in identifying and solving lots of solutions, solving lots of problems that we face as a country. So, for example, this population census that we did, imagine some of us who have not been counted, or some of our houses that have not been captured because people are living on the streets and we don't know where they live. When government is trying to develop policies, or when government is trying to develop, should I say, share the cake to the various regions or the various communities, some of us who have not been recorded will may be affected, or the number of items or the number of things that the government will be able to send to certain community may either oversee the number of people there, or may either be less than the number of people living in that community or living in that neighborhood.
Yes, as rightly said, I agree totally. Just a quick one. Considering some of the Ghanaian populace living outside, okay,
Yeah.
some citizens living outside, and everything is glued to housing, registration, etc. What becomes of those people living outside in case they want to come home and they want to fit? It means that immediately you come, you may face some challenges, right?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, it's definitely most of us who are living outside the country. Yes, we do have, as Ghana may be our home, we do have our families here, and if in any case uh, uh, you want to be, should I use the word, know where you live and the house numbers, getting those parts, I don't think would be the challenge. But I think you were talking about whether those people will be captured when we are making any efforts to, I mean, support, I mean, all the people within the country, and oh no, not all the people within the country, but Ghanaians, or making benefits or making things that will benefit Ghanaians in a whole. So I think this conversation may not be one that we would end here, but because I've heard a lot of conversations about around this, where we talk about what are we doing to really um, uh, create benefits to our people, or people who are living outside the country, but then are Ghanaians. It's only when it comes to voting that we call our people to come back home to come and register to vote, or when we need them in any support that we may think about. But and then what is most important is that currently I have seen many other things that governments have come in to put in place that I may not remember all, but they've put in place to make sure all of us enjoy whatever may be happening within the country. So the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, I think, has done a lot of initiative, whether we can talk, and then in collaboration maybe with the Foreign Affairs Ministry, which is the one, I think there's one, something I've forgotten, the one that brought a lot of Ghanaians who were abroad back home from tourism and all other things that we may talk about. And as Ghanaians who are living out of the country, as you live in that country, there are certain rights that you would have to enjoy because you are Ghanaian, or because we have some level of diplomacies or things with those countries, or allies with those countries. And basically, of them, I'm sure when you're living outside the country, right to healthcare, you definitely will enjoy it, just as, no, maybe not as exactly as it may be when you're in your country, but some of you even enjoy it better than some of us who are locally back home. But so some of these relations within countries would help us enjoy some of these rights that we may enjoy within our country, or some of the first share of the cake that is within our country, would also enjoy it elsewhere. So definitely, because you are living outside the country, you when you marry there or you give birth there, your children will have access to education in those countries. So the relationships that we have in these countries will also make you enjoy some rights there, just as if when you are in your country, those that you would enjoy here. I hope this captures your answer. I don't know.
Yes, but let me just go a bit specific. For example, I heard of this registration of the SIM cards,
Yes.
and they prefer people to use the Ghana card and not the passport. So, for example, if you've been outside Ghana and you do not have um the ID, the national ID,
Mm.
and they're also not using the passport, I mean, how would, as a human rights activist, what would you say in this situation, or how would you advise the policymakers to find a way to capture these people, or to make life a bit easier for them? For example, maybe if they could assist them to register their SIM cards that they may not want to lose, or whether they would help them do some form of registrations in the countries in which they find themselves. I mean, what is your take? What do you say?
Yes, I think that one I am a victim to to the use of Ghana card only for the registration of SIM card. That so many people, and even including the politicians, talk about the fact that it may limit so many people from registering their SIM cards, because not all people, or not all of us, do have access to the Ghana card. And how would we be able to register now that if you want to register for Ghana card, you have to pay a certain amount. I think it's around 250 Ghana cedi to acquire a Ghana card. So meaning the conversation, if we are looking at making recommendations to government, then we also have to find ways of convincing government to be able to capture other recognized ID cards. But then currently, what government is trying to emphasize on is the Ghana card. that most of us or all of us would have to use the Ghana card because it will be connected to, or it would be a card that will have all of that card ID cards that we used to have in the system in one card, which is the Ghana card. So in that essence, for most of us who are living outside the country, I think government would have to look at ways of using digitization. I think the vice president has preached this gospel severally. How, because some of these codes that we use in our country may not be applicable in other countries. How can we build other systems that would make sure people living outside the country with the Ghana card, if the Ghana card is going to be the only ID card that we are going to be using, they will be able to use the Ghana card to register for their SIM cards outside the country. So I think this would have to be championed by the Foreign Affairs Ministry to look at how we can register some of our citizens that who are living outside the country. So I think if they may have not thought about it yet, I think these are recommendations, or these are things that government will also have to look at in making sure we look at serving our colleagues or our fellow Ghanaians who are living outside the country. And maybe those of us who are also living outside the country, we do have our local associations or we do have our embassies. Maybe we can reach out to them. Maybe these embassies could put a collective, I don't know, petition or a collective idea together to the local, to the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and treating them to work in hand with the Ministry of Communication to help facilitate the process of registering our Ghanaians who are living outside the country. So not to discriminate against anybody because they are living outside the country. We are all Ghanaians. Yes.
Beautiful. You have really explained how these housing rights are linked to other human rights activities. Yes. So apart from some of these challenges that we have outlined or we have discussed, what do you think are some of the other challenges that this kind of linking the adequate housing policies? Yes, the right to adequate housing, linking it to other human rights, or yes, what are some of the challenges or the problems associated with it?
Yeah, so the problems are very, there are so many that we see, and I, I was talking about one which, like for example, let me talk about rights to health. Yes, so the registration of the NHIS card comes with a certain amount that you need to pay, and you need to also identify yourself as a Ghanaian to be able to register for the national health insurance card. So imagine situations where because you don't have a place of living, you are unable to register for any of these cards, and you get ill within your community. What would be the situation for a young boy or a parent who has no job or has nothing to do? I mean, what will happen to such a child? What will happen to such parent? So, in looking at that, then we would have to be preaching the gospel of making sure that our housing rights are are not only enjoyed by people who are just living in certain communities, but we look at extending it to every Ghanaian. So the conversation about how do we provide affordable housing to our people, because rent in Ghana or housing in Ghana is a big challenge, or even owning a property in Ghana is a big challenge in Ghana. So I'm talking about two things: even owning a property, one, which is a big thing, whether it is land, whether it is housing, it's a big problem, to a big challenge with the situations that many of our people go through in securing lands, the land act issue. That is one. There's another aspect of it is that, okay, rent control or rent issues are very, very are topical issues within the country. Okay, so when we also look at another face of it where government talk about affordable housing to our people, how many people or how many Ghanaians really enjoy the affordable housing that government puts across or puts down for us? We can talk about the Sagleme, we can talk about Reco Flats, which is in Medina, we can talk about the Adenta Flat and all that have been done by previous governments and we come to a conclusion that even affordable housing system where everything is there for everybody to enjoy is not adequate. We live in a situation where I just not being able to have the resources to be able to own a house and own a house at a very good place or in a very good environment. You would lack even having access to health, because the card comes at a certain cost. Apart from the cards too, the access to the healthcare would also come as a certain expense. Well, even for example, I use some communities or some slum communities that we have in the country where they don't have health systems in those places. They don't have schools there. They even face challenges where some of these slum communities become places for engaging in violence or engaging or promoting in other violent acts. And Liberian camp comes to mind as of now, where I mean the refugees camp is no longer in existence, but that place has become a very sound community where a lot of people who live there engage in other things. So even the good people who are living there as of today have been there's plan to evacuate them or evict them out of after that place. So in it all, look at the environments that we see people who live in these areas find themselves. And I talk about other things that would also happen within these places if governments or if our people don't look at protecting the rights or the housing rights of our citizens. And yes, so Doki, these are the challenges that we can mention, which is on health, which is on even sexual violence, which is on engaging in social biases. And most of these slum communities have been noted, have been seen, or have been noted for this kind of acts. And even the good people or the good ones who live around these communities gets to be attached to this kind of living situation. And most of these slum areas, people live there with no right to own any of the properties that they have there, because the land on which you are dwelling on does not even belongs to you. The people, some of us who even live on the streets, who sleep or on the streets, I mean, you have the rights to even own where you put your head and your clothes to sleep. You don't have it, because where you are living is not yours. So many components of rights are being affected. So we even talk about sanitation. Some of these areas, the filthiness or the how filthy these kind of communities find themselves. So taking away that from our people, I think it's a sad situation that most countries have have faced within Africa, and especially where I am so familiar with, which is Ghana, and the first vision, because we all have the right, if we own our properties, not to be forcefully evicted from our properties. But imagine situation, you don't own the place says the government says the place belongs to them. What do you have to say about that? What right would you have when that is being taken away from you? You can't follow any due process to even own a lawyer to be able to fight any case in court, to be able to recoup any losses, or to be able to have your properties at hand. And this have happened severally in our countries where evictions take place, where eviction takes place and people are not compensated for being evicted. And I know when we look at the standards that we would have to follow in evicting people, that's will be lost. That's right, or that enjoyment will be taken away from many of our people who live in these slum communities, or who don't have the right to rights to adequate housing. So more and more, we can talk about, which would also be common to the rights, even as I was talking about, to be counted as a citizen or to be counted as a Ghanaian, becomes a challenge. So these population census that we carried out within the country, there are most people who were not counted. And yes, because you don't know where you live, you don't know where you are, you don't have anything about you. So how do we as a country even put in structures to be able to feed into making provisions for our people to enjoy adequately? And some of these communities, governments would also be reluctant in providing social amenities to them. And you all can remember, this is a little bit political, but forgive me, because during the run up to the elections, people who were living in Agbogblosi were promised some some level of housing for them when a certain government comes to power. But today, Agbogblosi has been cleared. The lands have been cleared for other purposes. So you see, it becomes a big challenge for government to really put in place measures to feed these people into the country's developmental projects, and 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 even the young people, young boys who live there. Yes, it becomes difficult to be able to meet up to life expectations, which is the norms, by going to school, by carrying a certain skill within your schooling process to be able to be useful to the community, also be useful to your family. Some of these dreams of young people living or not having houses would be affected, or will be swallowed because they don't have access. So these are the challenges. These are the problems. If not taken into consideration, we have a chunk of our members or a chunk of our people or populace facing a lot of issues. Um, Doki, apart from sanitation that I've talked about, because it is sanitation which be the reason why the Accra mayor, or sorry, Accra regional minister is trying to put in measures to be able to make Accra the neatest city in Africa, or yes, or in West Africa, which has been a promise of the government. So many of them live in these communities that are very filthy. This would affect the health of young people within the community. That could be linked to malaria, cholera, and other health diseases or health complications that young people or people living in communities of this sort would face. And after contracting these diseases, what is the remedy? What is the way to out of this situation? That would be talking about having healthcare. How do you get a healthcare when you are living in a community which does not have a healthcare? You will continue taking concussions and listening to people on television, or I mean, quote unquote, fake, pastors or fake pastors giving you solutions in selling water. I mean, anointed water to them to cure some of their diseases, and end up killing most of our citizens, or eradicating our citizens, because we are not putting measures in place for our people to enjoy the basic rights, or their basic rights to housing, which we have been discussing today. Okay, I will end here, and if there are more questions, we take them. Thank you.
Okay. We've been hearing these words, adequate housing, affordable housing, and I ask myself, is it that we just love to use adjectives? Or is it that, I mean, there's something like that? Or I don't know. What do you say? Is there something called adequate housing or affordable housing, or we are just trying to use adjectives to please ourselves?
Oh, okay. So that would mean we'll be talking about the adequate as one word, and affordable also as one word. So if you have adequate and affordable, then our people would be able to afford living in good conditions, or living in environments that would benefit or socially, I mean, uh, be a benefit to them. Well, affordable housing, if it is Ghana we're talking about, then I'll talk about. I've already spoke about it and say that, like, it's not a reality, because the affordable housings are very expensive, that's not people, middle class people can or not even afford. People working receiving pays even at a net salary of 2,000 will not be able to afford some of these affordable housing. So it's like you said, it's one of those adjectives that we are using within the country. It has no locus. It is not real, and adequate of it all is another big one that we talk about. There's no adequate housing. We don't have adequate housing. Even the planning, we don't have any plan towards even planning our communities to be able to fit the kind of 21st century environment that we are talking about. And Accra, well, maybe a certain aspect of it we say is okay, but many portions or parts of Accra are not in its good status, and flooding continue to engage many of our people, and day in day out people are losing their homes or places of living. So my dear sister, affordable need there. I'm not sure. Say there's one in Ghana. Maybe I may be wrong, and I wish somebody would help me in that area. And adequate to it's not a word that is in existence. And this I'm talking about Ghana, not any other country. Maybe some other countries do have. Yes.
Okay, thanks for the information or the clarification. We hope they change those adjectives to make it a practical to make it practical. It should be, I mean, it should be real in that sense. It should be
So
happening. Okay.
so
Yes. Our time is almost up, and we want to find out what is Glode. Just a very brief one. What is Glode doing in terms of adequate housing, affordable housing, human rights? I mean, what has Glode done so far and yet to do? And afterwards, you could give us the address or contact information of Glode, and then draw the business. Thanks.
yes, so thank you so much. And I think one of the things that Rodif is doing is what we are doing right away here on your show, which is that the advocacy aspect of it is very important, because we know also as people we have to know our rights or understand our rights to be able to reclaim them, because I believe in that saying that for the lack of knowledge, our people perish very very well from the holy books. And truthfully, our people have been perishing for the lack of knowledge. So that is why it is very very important for us as an organization to engage more in educating our people to understand what housing rights is about, how are these rights linked to other rights, and other discussions that we've been able to have for the past weeks on your show and other platforms that we've been able to do this for some time now. So and there's another professional aspect of it where we talk about people who find themselves in this situation and how can we work in hand to reclaim their rights for them. And that we talk about people who face a lot of issues in respect to rights to owning properties or rights to be able to live, I mean, in a certain community, or rent, and any other of these rights that we talk about. There are many of our many of our people, or like I use the word Ghanaians, who face some of these challenges. What kind of technical advice, what kind of technical support or professional support can we give them? Is it in a form of recommendation to other stakeholders or other agencies that are within this environment to be able to support people or Ghanaians to be able to reclaim their freedom or reclaim their rights, where we talk about housing rights. So this has been some of the things we've been doing for some time now, and we'll continue to do, and even recommend or receive recommendations to some other things that we can do. And with the last part of your question, um, which is about our organization, which every day we talk about, which is that we are human rights professionals who are passionate about protecting and promoting the dignity of all persons without distinction. So I'd like to share our website with you, and our listeners to visit our website, which is glodit.org or www.glodit.org, and you can reach out to our leadership, which talk about the national president. If you want to reach out to us, his number is 0243738524, and our general secretary and if anytime you want to reach out to our secretariat, you can also get in touch with him. And I'm just cross-checking if I could get a number as soon as possible. Okay, so I've gotten the number, so you can reach out to us on our website, which I've already indicated, which is www.glodit.org. And you can also reach out to our General Secretary Joseph Ankama on 02 okay, so 0244694502. So again, 0244694502. And our social media handles are also active.